They believed humans were weaker till the war fleet came through the rift. The observation vessel drifted silently through the cold darkness of space. Its sensors pointed toward a small blue planet that orbited an unremarkable yellow star. Commander Silthix of the Dralith Dominion reviewed the data on his display screen and let out a hiss of disappointment. He had hoped to find something interesting in this distant corner of the galaxy, but what he found instead was a world of primitives. "What do you make of them?" asked his second officer, a young female named Kiraveth. "They call themselves humans," Silthix replied, his serpentine body coiling with amusement. "They have existed for perhaps 300,000 cycles, yet they have barely managed to reach their own moon. They fight wars against each other over imaginary lines on their planet. They destroy their own environment. They live for barely 100 cycles before their bodies fail them." Kiraveth studied the images of the strange bipedal creatures. They had no scales to protect their soft skin. They had no claws or fangs worth mentioning. They could not see in the dark or hear sounds beyond a limited range. They had no natural venom, no telepathic abilities, and no way to regenerate lost limbs. "They seem rather fragile," she observed. "Fragile as being generous," Silthix laughed. "These creatures are perhaps the most unremarkable species we have ever catalogued. They would not survive a single day on most worlds in the Concordance." The Galactic Concordance was a coalition of 12 spacefaring species that had maintained peace and order across 1,000 star systems for over 40,000 cycles. The Dralith were one of its founding members, a proud race of reptilian beings who had conquered their corner of the galaxy through superior intellect and military might. Other members included the Valtharan, towering crystalline entities who possessed immense psychic powers. There were the Korath, a warrior species with 4 arms and skin like armor plating. The Luminari existed as beings of pure energy, ancient and wise beyond measure. Each species had proven itself worthy of membership through strength or knowledge or both. But these humans? They were nothing. Silthix compiled his report and sent it through the faster-than-light communication network to the Concordance capital. Within days, his assessment was reviewed by the High Council and a decision was made. Ambassador Kethvoran, the senior Dralith representative, presented the findings to the assembled delegates from all 12 species. "The planet designated Earth contains a sentient species that calls itself humanity," he announced, his scales shimmering under the council chamber lights. "Our observation teams have conducted a thorough analysis, and we recommend classification as a Tier 7 primitive species." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the vast chamber. The Korath warlord, a massive creature named Throkmer, bared his fangs in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Another race of weaklings," he growled. "The galaxy seems full of them." "They do show some minor potential," added the Valtharan High Seer, her crystalline form pulsing with soft light. "Their minds are chaotic and undisciplined, but they possess a certain raw creativity that is unusual. Raw creativity will not save them from extinction," Kethvoran replied dismissively. "They are already destroying their own world through pollution and war. I give them perhaps another 1,000 cycles before they eliminate themselves." The council voted unanimously to classify humanity as Tier 7. This meant they would be protected from exploitation by more advanced species, but they would also be barred from any participation in galactic affairs. Observation posts would be established to monitor their development, but no contact would be made. Earth was marked on the star maps as a primitive world, and then it was largely forgotten. 50 Earth years passed. The observation posts continued their silent watch, recording data that almost nobody bothered to read. The humans continued their squabbles and their struggles, unaware that they were being studied by beings from the stars. But something was changing on the little blue planet. The humans had stopped fighting each other quite so much. They had formed new alliances and new governments. They had built new machines and new technologies. They spread from their homeworld to their moon, establishing permanent bases there. They reached out to the red planet they called Mars and began building colonies beneath its dusty surface. They pushed further still into the asteroid belt between their inner and outer planets. Mining stations appeared, then manufacturing facilities. Ships traveled back and forth, carrying resources and people. The observation teams noted these developments with mild interest. It was not unusual for primitive species to experience bursts of progress. Most would eventually stagnate or destroy themselves. The humans would surely follow the same pattern. Then something unexpected happened. A Concordance patrol vessel experienced a critical malfunction while passing through the outer reaches of the human star system. Its engines failed, its life support began to collapse, and it tumbled helplessly toward the third planet. The ship crashed into a large body of water that the humans called the Pacific Ocean. Concordance protocols demanded immediate retrieval of the vessel and its crew. A recovery team was dispatched, but they arrived too late. The humans had already found the wreckage. They had pulled it from the water and taken it to a secure facility. The recovery team observed from orbit, uncertain how to proceed. Direct intervention with a Tier 7 species was forbidden. They reported the situation to the High Council and waited for instructions. The Council debated for weeks. Some argued for immediate action to retrieve the technology. Others insisted that the protocols must be respected. In the end, they decided to wait and observe. The humans were too primitive to understand what they had found. They would study it for a time and then lose interest. This was a terrible mistake. The humans did not lose interest. They studied the crashed vessel with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Teams of their brightest scientists worked day and night, taking apart every component and analyzing every system. They did not understand all of what they found, but they understood enough. Within a decade, the first human vessels equipped with faster-than-light engines were conducting test flights beyond their star system. Within 2 decades, they had built a small fleet of exploration ships. Within 3 decades, they were ready. The message arrived at Concordance headquarters without warning. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Earth Federation. We have achieved faster-than-light travel and are requesting formal contact with the Galactic Concordance. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations. Ambassador Kethvoran read the message 3 times before he believed it was real. The creatures he had dismissed as fragile and unremarkable had somehow leaped from primitive rockets to interstellar travel in less than a single Dralith lifetime. He gathered the council for an emergency session. "It appears," he said slowly, "that we may have underestimated the humans." The galaxy was about to learn just how badly they had misjudged the small, soft, short-lived creatures from the little blue planet. They believed humans were weakened till the war fleet came through the rift. Admiral Helena Vance stood at the entrance to the Grand Council chamber and took a deep breath. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, and she would not let her species down. The doors slid open, and she walked into a room that could have held a small city. Thousands of delegates from 12 different species turned to watch her approach. Some looked curious. Some looked amused. Many looked at her with open contempt. She was the first human to ever set foot in this place, and she intended to make an impression. The walk to the central platform took nearly 5 minutes. Helena kept her pace steady and her head high. She wore her dress uniform, decorated with the medals she had earned during the resource wars of the previous century. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes missed nothing. Ambassador Kethvoran waited for her at the speaker's podium. His serpentine form towered over her small human frame, and his scales gleamed with colors that indicated superiority and mild irritation. "You are the representative of the human species?" he asked, his translator device converting his hisses into words she could understand. "I am Admiral Helena Vance, first envoy of the United Earth Federation," she replied. "I bring greetings from our world and a formal request for membership in the Galactic Concordance." A wave of laughter rolled through the chamber. The sound came from 1,000 different vocal systems, creating a strange symphony of mockery. The Karath warlord Throkmar rose from his seat, his massive form casting a shadow across the entire platform. "This tiny creature wishes to join the Concordance?" he bellowed. "Look at her. She has no armor, no claws, no strength. A child of my species could crush her with one hand." "Physical strength is not the only measure of a species," Helena replied calmly. "Then what do you offer?" demanded the Valtheran High Seer. "We have scanned your mind, human. It is a storm of chaos and emotion. You have no psychic discipline, no mental shields, no ability to join the greater consciousness." "We offer other qualities," Helena said. "What qualities?" hissed Kethvorin. "We have studied your kind for over a century. You are short-lived, barely surviving 100 cycles. You are fragile, vulnerable to temperatures and environments that other species tolerate easily. You wage war upon yourselves constantly. You destroy your own planet. What could you possibly offer the Concordance?" Helena looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. "We offer determination," she said. "We offer creativity. We offer the ability to adapt and overcome any obstacle. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have climbed from caves to the stars in the blink of a cosmic eye. We are not as weak as you believe." More laughter filled the chamber. The council debated for 3 days before reaching a decision. Humanity would be granted provisional membership at Tier 4 status. This was far below what Helena had hoped for, but it was better than nothing. Tier 4 status meant limited trade rights, restricted to the outer regions of concordant space. It meant access only to technology that was considered obsolete by the advanced species. It meant a single delegate who could observe council proceedings but could not vote on any matter. Helena accepted the terms with grace. She smiled and thanked the council for their generosity. She shook hands and appendages with delegates who barely hid their scorn. But inside she was taking notes. She noticed how the Dralith controlled most of the important committees. She observed how the Karath were feared but not respected. She saw how the Valtheran used their psychic abilities to influence decisions in subtle ways. She learned the politics and the power structures and the hidden conflicts. And she sent detailed reports back to Earth. The humans had achieved faster than light travel, but they had also achieved something else. They had learned from watching the stars for so long that the universe was not a friendly place. They had studied the crashed Concordance vessel and understood that they were surrounded by species, far older and far more powerful than themselves. They knew that someday they might need to fight. So while Helena smiled and accepted insults with dignity, the United Earth Federation was building. Deep in the outer reaches of the solar system, far from prying sensors and curious eyes, massive construction projects were underway. Shipyards the size of moons produced vessels of war. Weapons laboratories developed technologies that the Concordance had never imagined. Training facilities turned ordinary humans into soldiers who could fight in any environment. The humans studied every species in the Concordance. They learned their strengths and their weaknesses. They analyzed their weapons and their tactics. They prepared for conflicts they hoped would never come. 20 years passed. Helena was no longer young, but she remained at her post. She had become a familiar presence at council meetings, always watching, always listening, never complaining about the treatment her species received. The other species had grown comfortable with humans. They saw them as harmless, useful for minor tasks and cheap labor. Human merchants were allowed to trade at the edges of civilized space. Human engineers were hired to perform dangerous jobs that other species refused. The humans accepted every opportunity. They spread throughout the galaxy, always learning, always adapting. They made friends where they could. The Luminari found human creativity fascinating and enjoyed long conversations about art and philosophy. Some younger members of other species developed respect for human determination, but the ruling classes remained dismissive. At every council meeting, human requests for upgraded status were denied. Human proposals were ignored or mocked. Human achievements were attributed to luck or theft. Helena endured it all with patience. One evening, a young Drelith diplomat approached her at a reception. "I do not understand you, Admiral," he said. "We treat your kind poorly, yet you never react with anger. Are humans truly so passive?" Helena smiled and took a sip of her drink. "We are many things," she replied, "but passive is not one of them. We are simply patient." The young diplomat looked confused. "Patient? What are you waiting for?" Helena gazed out the window at the stars that filled the night sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of concordant senses, humanity was still building. "We are waiting for our moment," she said softly. "It will come. It always does." The diplomat laughed and walked away, dismissing her words as the fantasies of a primitive creature. He did not know that at that very moment, the outer defenses of concordant space were detecting something strange. Sensors that had been silent for 200,000 cycles were beginning to flicker with warnings. Something was coming. Something ancient and terrible was stirring in the darkness between dimensions. And when it arrived, the galaxy would finally discover what humanity was truly capable of. Helena Vance looked at the stars and waited. Her people had been preparing for this since the day they first looked up at the night sky and wondered what dangers lurked among those distant lights. The Concordants thought humans were weak. They were about to learn the truth. They believed humans were weak until the war fleet came through the rift. The first warning came from a mining colony at the very edge of concordant space. The message was garbled and filled with static, but the terror in the voice was unmistakable. "Something is coming through. The sky is tearing open. We need help. Please, somebody help us." Then the transmission ended. A patrol fleet was sent to investigate. 12 warships crewed by experienced Korath warriors made the journey to the distant system. They arrived to find nothing but debris and death. The colony was gone. The mining stations were destroyed. The planet itself was scarred with wounds that glowed with an unnatural purple light. And in the sky above, a massive tear in reality pulsed and writhed like a living thing. The patrol fleet commander sent a single message before his ships were consumed. "The rift has opened. The Voidborn have returned." Panic swept through the concordance like a plague. The ancient records spoke of the Voidborn in fragmented whispers of horror. They were entities from beyond normal space, creatures that existed in the gaps between dimensions. They fed on conscious thought, drawn to sapient minds like predators to the scent of blood. 200,000 cycles ago, they had invaded the galaxy. 3 spacefaring civilizations had been completely destroyed before the survivors found a way to seal the rift. The war had nearly ended all intelligent life, and now they had returned. Ambassador Kethvorn called an emergency session of the council. His scales had lost their color, pale with a fear he could not hide. Delegates from all 12 species crowded into the chamber, their voices rising in chaos. "We must consolidate our forces," Kethvorn announced. "All ships will fall back to defend our core worlds. The frontier colonies will have to be sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" shouted a representative from a smaller species. My people live on those frontier worlds. You cannot simply abandon them. We have no choice. Kethvorn hissed. The Voidborn cannot be defeated in open battle. The ancient records are clear. We must protect what we can and hope that we can find a way to seal the rift again. The Karth warlord Throckmur slammed his 4 fists against his podium. The Karth do not hide from enemies. He bellowed. We will meet these creatures in battle and crush them. Your bravado will not save you, said the Valtharan High Seer, her crystalline form flickering with distress. I have seen visions of what is coming. The Voidborn are beyond anything we can fight. They are darkness given form. They are hunger without end. The chamber erupted into arguments and accusations. Species blamed each other for the failure of the ancient seals. Alliances that had lasted millennia began to crack under the weight of fear. Helena Vance sat in her small seat at the back of the chamber and watched it all unfold. She had lived among these beings for decades, and she had never seen them like this. The mighty species of the Concordance, the rulers of 1,000 star systems, were falling apart at the first sign of true danger. She stood up and walked toward the central platform. The arguing continued until someone noticed her approaching. One by one, the delegates fell silent, staring at the small human woman who dared to interrupt their deliberations. Kethvorn turned to face her with irritation in his eyes. What do you want, human? This is not a matter for primitive species. I have a proposal, Helena said, her voice calm and steady. Throckmur laughed. A proposal? From the weaklings who cannot even claim a single vote in this chamber. What could you possibly propose that would matter? Earth requests permission to send a fleet to the rift, Helena replied. Silence fell over the chamber. Then laughter erupted, louder and more mocking than ever before. A fleet? Kethvorn hissed. What fleet? You have a handful of trade vessels and exploration ships. The Voidborn would destroy them in moments. We have more than you know, Helena said. The laughter faded into confusion. The delegates exchanged uncertain glances. What do you mean? Asked the Valtharan High Seer. For the past 50 years, humanity has been building, Helena explained. We have constructed warships and weapons. We have trained soldiers and pilots. We have prepared for a day when we might need to fight for our survival. Impossible. Throckmur growled. We would have detected such construction. Our sensors monitor all of concordant space. Your sensors monitor concordant space, Helena agreed. But our shipyards are beyond your borders, in the outer reaches of our home system, hidden in the darkness where nobody thought to look. Kethvorn leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Are you saying that you have been building a military force in secret? That is a violation of concordance law. We are a Tier 4 species, Helena replied. The laws regarding military construction do not apply to us. We checked very carefully. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. The delegates were shocked and confused. How could this primitive species have built anything significant without their knowledge? Even if what you say is true, Kethvorn said slowly, what makes you think your primitive weapons could succeed where concordance technology would fail? Helena smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Because we have spent our entire existence fighting, she said. We have fought against nature. We have fought against disease. We have fought against extinction. We have fought against each other. We know war in a way that your ancient and peaceful species have forgotten. She looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had dismissed humanity for so long. You look at our short lives and see weakness, she continued. But those short lives have taught us something important. We have no time to waste. We cannot wait for problems to solve themselves. When danger comes, we face it directly, and we do whatever is necessary to survive. The Valtheran High Seer studied Helena with renewed interest. "You truly believe you can fight the Voidborn?" "I believe we can try," Helena replied. "And I believe that trying is better than hiding in fear." She turned to address the entire council. "Give us permission to enter the combat zone. Let humanity show you what we are capable of. If we fail, you will have lost nothing but a species you never valued anyway. But if we succeed, you might just survive this war." The council debated for hours, but in the end, they had no better options. Permission was granted. Helena sent a single coded message back to Earth. The message contained only 2 words. "Begin deployment." In the darkness beyond the outer planets, engines that had waited decades for this moment roared to life. The human war fleet was coming. They believed humans were weakened till the war fleet came through the rift. The combined fleet of the Galactic Concordance held position 2 light-years from the Zirithi Rift. Over 8,000 warships from 11 species formed a defensive line, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Throckmar of the Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the crushing blow, and watched the rift pulse with evil light. The tear in reality stretched across millions of kilometers, bleeding purple and black energy into normal space. And through that tear, nightmares were emerging. The Voidborn constructs were unlike anything the Concordance had ever faced. They were ships, but they were also alive. Organic hulls of twisted flesh and bone stretched kilometers long. Eyes that saw across dimensions covered their surfaces. Tentacles and claws reached out from every angle. They came through the rift in waves, each one larger and more terrible than the last. "All ships, open fire!" Throckmar commanded. Thousands of plasma lances and energy beams lit up the darkness. The most powerful weapons in the Concordance arsenal struck the Voidborn constructs with enough force to shatter moons. The Voidborn did not even slow down. The weapons that had conquered 100 worlds splashed harmlessly against the nightmare hulls. The energy was absorbed, devoured, consumed by creatures that fed on the very essence of destruction. The Voidborn returned fire. Beams of pure darkness lanced across space. They did not burn or explode. They simply erased whatever they touched. 3 Korath warships vanished in an instant, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Panic spread through the fleet. Ships began to break formation as captains desperately tried to evade the deadly beams. The disciplined battle lines collapsed into chaos. "Hold your positions," Throckmar roared, but his voice was lost in the screams of dying crews and the howl of overloaded systems. More Voidborn constructs poured through the rift. There were dozens now, then hundreds. They spread across space like a plague, surrounding the Concordance fleet. It was over. Everyone knew it. The mightiest military force in the galaxy was about to be destroyed, and there was nothing anyone could do. Then a second tier appeared in space. This was not like the rift. It was not a wound in reality, not a bleeding gap between dimensions. It was precise, controlled, deliberate. A perfect circle of blue-white light opened behind the Concordance fleet. And through it came humanity. The Earth-united fleet emerged in perfect formation. 12,000 warships moved as one, their engines burning with fierce light. They were not elegant like Concordance vessels. They were brutal, angular, covered in armor plating and weapons. They were built for one purpose, only war. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Unconquered, and surveyed the battlefield. He was an old man, scarred from decades of training and preparation. His eyes were cold and calm as he watched the Voidborn approach. "All ships, battle formation Alpha," he commanded. "Weapons free. Target the lead constructs." His voice cut across all frequencies, reaching every ship in the area. Concordance vessels fall back to position echo. Humanity will take the vanguard. Throckmor sputtered with rage. You cannot simply take command of this battle. I am the ranking officer. With respect, Admiral, your fleet is in chaos and your weapons are useless, Chunwei replied. We do not have time to argue. Move your ships or lose them. The choice is yours. The Korath Wars hesitated for only a moment. He had never retreated from any enemy, but he had also never faced an enemy like this. His ships were dying around him, and the humans were offering a chance to survive. All Concordance vessels, fall back, he ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. The human fleet surged forward. The first salvo was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Kinetic rounds accelerated to near light speed tore through space. Fusion warheads detonated against void-borne hulls. And something new, something the humans called harmonic disruptors, sent waves of dimensional energy crashing into the enemy. The lead void-borne construct, a monster that had shrugged off 1,000 concordance attacks, shuddered and cracked. Then it shattered. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. But Chunwei silenced them immediately. Celebrate later. Fight now. All ships continue firing. The battle became a storm of light and death. Human ships dove into the void-borne formation, weaving between the massive constructs with impossible skill. They struck from every angle, never staying still, never giving the enemy a clear target. The void-borne fought back with fury. Human ships exploded in balls of flame as the dark beams found their marks. Hundreds of lives ended in seconds. But for every human ship destroyed, the others closed the gap. They adapted, learned, adjusted their tactics in real time. Human pilots flew maneuvers that should have been impossible, pushing their ships beyond all limits. And when their ships were damaged beyond repair, they did not retreat. The destroyer Resolute, its engines failing and its weapons offline, accelerated directly into a void-borne construct. The collision tore both vessels apart. The cruiser Last Stand, surrounded by enemies with no hope of escape, overloaded its reactor and detonated. The explosion took 3 void-borne constructs with it. Across the battlefield, human crews made the same choice. They would not run. They would not surrender. They would fight until they could fight no more, and then they would make their deaths count. The Concordance fleet watched in stunned silence. What are they doing? Whispered a Dralith captain. They are throwing away their lives. No, replied a Luminari observer, their energy form flickering with something like awe. They are buying time. They are buying victory. The battle raged for hours. The human fleet took terrible losses, but they never stopped fighting. They adapted to every void-borne tactic. They found weaknesses that no other species had discovered. They pushed forward relentlessly, and they sang. Battle hymns in 100 human languages filled the communication channels. Songs of defiance and courage and determination. The music of a species that had faced extinction countless times and refused to die. The void-borne began to falter. For the first time in 200,000 cycles, the creatures from beyond reality felt something they did not understand. The humans were not afraid. The humans were not despairing. The humans were fighting with a joy that was almost frightening. The void-borne had fed on fear since the beginning of time. But these strange, small, short-lived creatures had none to give. One by one, the void-borne constructs were destroyed. The advance slowed, stopped, and then reversed. The nightmares retreated back toward the rift. Admiral Chen Wei watched them go, his face expressionless. The human fleet had been cut in half, but they had won the first battle. He opened a channel to the Concordance fleet. "This is Admiral Chen Wei," he said. "The enemy is retreating. But this war is not over. It will take everything we have to close that rift forever." He paused, then added, "We hope you will join us." The galaxy had just witnessed something it would never forget: the day humanity went to war. They believed humans were weaker till the war fleet came through the rift. The war lasted 3 years. 3 years of constant battle, endless sacrifice, and unimaginable destruction. The Voidborn poured through the rift in wave after wave, and humanity met every wave with fire and blood. The concordant species eventually joined the fight. Inspired by human courage, they found their own will to resist. Karath warriors fought alongside human soldiers. Dralith commanders coordinated with human admirals. Even the ancient Luminari contributed their wisdom to the war effort. But everyone knew the truth. Humanity carried the heaviest burden. Human factories worked day and night, building new ships to replace the ones lost in battle. Human training camps produced soldiers at a rate that astonished the galaxy. Human scientists developed new weapons and new tactics, adapting faster than any species had ever adapted before. And humans died. They died by the thousands, then by the millions. Every family on Earth lost someone. Every colony flew flags of mourning. The cost of the war was measured in tears and empty chairs at dinner tables. But they never stopped fighting. Admiral Helena Vance, now in her 80s, remained at her post on the Concordance capital. She coordinated supply lines, managed diplomacy, and sent letters of condolence to more families than she could count. One evening, a young human lieutenant came to her office with a report. "Admiral, we have analyzed the rift," he said. "Our scientists believe they have found a way to close it permanently. But the device must be detonated inside the rift, in the Voidborn dimension itself." Helena read the report carefully. This would require a team to enter the rift and plant the device. The chances of survival would be 0. "Yes, Admiral. The mission would be one way." Helena closed her eyes for a moment. She had known this day would come. Throughout human history, victory had often required the ultimate sacrifice. This war would be no different. "Ask for volunteers," she ordered. "Make sure they understand what they are agreeing to." The call went out, and volunteers came forward by the tens of thousands. More humans offered to give their lives than could possibly be accepted. In the end, a team of 37 was selected. They were the best of the best: soldiers, pilots, engineers, and scientists. Each one knew they would never return home. Sergeant Maria Santos was chosen to lead the mission. She was 42 years old, a veteran of a dozen major battles, and she had no family left to mourn her. The war had taken everyone she loved. Before the mission launched, she recorded a final message. "My name is Maria Santos. I was born in a small town in Brazil, on a planet called Earth. I grew up hearing stories about the stars, about the universe beyond our little world. I never imagined I would die among those stars, but I cannot think of a better end." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "To my fellow humans, I am proud of what we have become. We were dismissed as weak and primitive, but we proved them wrong. We showed the galaxy that courage is not measured in size or strength or lifespan. It is measured in the willingness to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost." She smiled, a genuine expression of peace. "To the species of the Concordance, remember us. Remember that the creatures you called fragile gave everything to protect you. We ask nothing in return except that you treat the next primitive species with more respect than you gave us." The final message ended with 3 words: "Humanity endures, always." The mission launched on a cold morning in November, Earth time. The ship carrying the strike team was small and fast, designed to slip through the Voidborn defenses and reach the rift. The entire human fleet provided cover, engaging the enemy on all fronts. Ships sacrificed themselves to create openings. Pilots flew suicide runs to draw Voidborn attention. The small ship reached the rift and entered it. What they found on the other side was beyond description. A dimension of darkness and hunger, where nothing should exist but somehow did. Voidborn constructs by the millions filled the impossible space. The team fought their way forward. One by one, they fell. The Voidborn tore through their defenses with terrible efficiency. But they kept going. By the time they reached the designated coordinates, only 7 remained. Sergeant Santos was wounded, her armor cracked, and her blood floating in the zero gravity. "Set the device," she ordered. "Maximum yield." Her team obeyed. The rift sealer activated, its countdown beginning. The Voidborn sensed what was happening. They converged on the small group of humans, thousands of nightmare creatures rushing to stop the destruction of their pathway to the galaxy. The 7 survivors formed a circle around the device. They had only seconds of ammunition left, only moments of life remaining. Maria Santos looked at her team, at the brave humans who had followed her into certain death. "It has been an honor," she said. Then she opened a communication channel that broadcast across the entire galaxy. "See you on the other side. Humanity endures." The rift sealer detonated. The explosion was not made of fire or force. It was made of dimensional energy, a ripple that collapsed the barrier between spaces. The rift tore itself apart, sealing forever. The Voidborn dimension was closed. The invasion was over. 6 months later, Ambassador Keth Voran stood before the council. His scales were pale, and his voice trembled as he spoke. "The Galactic Concordance owes its existence to humanity," he said. "We mocked them as weak. We dismissed them as primitive. We treated them as inferior in every way." He paused, shame evident in every line of his body. "We were wrong. Humanity has proven itself to be the most courageous species this galaxy has ever known. They gave everything to protect a galaxy that had given them nothing but contempt." He turned to face Admiral Helena Vance, who stood at the speaker's platform. "Humanity is hereby granted Tier 1 status, full voting rights, a permanent seat on the Security Council, and the eternal gratitude of every species in the Concordance." Helena accepted with a simple nod. She was too tired for speeches, too weary from years of war and loss. But later, alone on the observation deck, a young luminary approached her. "Admiral, may I ask a question?" "Of course. Your people were so few, so fragile. Your lives are so short. How did you become strong enough to save us all?" Helena looked out at the stars, the same stars that had called to humanity since the first humans looked up from their campfires on Earth. "We were never weak," she said quietly. "We were just patient. Every hardship, every war, every disaster taught us something. We learned to survive. We learned to adapt. We learned that nothing, no matter how powerful, could destroy us if we refused to give up." The luminary considered this. "But your lives are so short. How you accomplish so much in so little time?" Helena smiled, and in that smile was the wisdom of 10,000 years of human struggle. "That is exactly why we accomplish so much. We know how little time we have. Every day matters. Every moment is precious. We burn brighter because we know our flames will not last forever." She turned to face the alien, her eyes holding a fire that age could not diminish. The galaxy looked at our short lives and saw weakness. They did not understand the truth. We have never stopped fighting against oblivion. And we never will. The luminary had no response to that. Humanity had arrived. They had paid for their place among the stars with blood and sacrifice. And the galaxy would never, ever underestimate them again.